Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the launch of the Challenge 25 campaign. I'm James Lowman. I'm the Chief Executive of the Association of Convenience Stores, and I'm chairing today's event. Thank you all very much for joining us. This event is being recorded, so we'll be able to make this available on the ACS portal afterwards. But thank you so many of you for taking part in this launch, which I think demonstrates just how important an issue it is. I'm just going to say a few words at the start by means of introduction, and I'm going to start off by giving a bit of context for the situation and what is happening with Challenge 25, how we've got to this point. So the first point to make is that we're going way back 20 years ago, discussions about the Licensing Act 2003. I was in meetings, some people on this call might have been in meetings with the Home Office, with other government departments, when cabinet ministers were literally banging the table and challenging the retail industry, not just convenience stores, supermarkets, other businesses as well, for their record on preventing underage sales of, in particular, alcohol was their main concern at the time. And I think the industry really took that on board, and we did a number of things. One thing is the formation of the proof of age standard scheme, which is a really important scheme which accredits proof of age. So you know as a retailer which proof of age cards you can accept in store, in addition to the driving license and a passport. And I'm proud to be a member of the board of the proof of age standard scheme. We then launched, the industry then moved into a Challenge 21 policy. So saying, look, if someone looks under 21, challenge them for proof of age to prove that they're 18. But then as time went on, the feedback we got was, look, we're still challenging people on that basis. We're still talking to our colleagues and saying, challenge people who look under 21, and we're still making mistakes. We're still falling foul of test purchases, and we're still not confident that we're avoiding making all of those age-restricted sales. So Challenge 25 was born as a build on that, and that was set up and managed by the Retail of Alcohol Standards Group, another organisation which we're very involved with, and you'll hear later on from Hardy, who chairs that group. And then alongside that, some more work happening to try and address this issue and to address some of the wider issues related, again, particularly to alcohol. And that's prime among that being Community Alcohol Partnerships, another organisation which I'm on the board of, which does a lot of great work in trying to promote prevention of underage sales, but also tackling antisocial behaviour and some other local issues that can relate to alcohol consumption by people underage. So a lot of wider work goes on through Community Alcohol Partnerships. So fundamentally, I think we're in a really positive place. Our industry has done a lot over a long period of time, but you may have noticed on that previous slide that most of the initiatives I talk about, most of that context that I talked about, started with alcohol. It started with government legislation on alcohol. It started with the alcohol industry getting together to try to tackle some of these issues. Now, of course, lots of other product suppliers for products that we sell have been involved in those initiatives and very supportive. But it's really worth noting that the range of products that we sell that are age restricted in store, there are legally age restricted products. They're in red. Don't worry, I'm not going to go through line by line. There are products where there's no legal age restriction in place, but there is custom practice and published good practice on not selling below a certain age. And then there are some areas where retailers sometimes choose to implement voluntary age restrictions. And what this campaign today is about, and the really key point on this campaign, is that it's about saying we want Challenge 25 across all legally age-restricted products. And wherever you are applying an age restriction in store, to use Challenge 25 as the basis for doing that. Moving on to the next slide, please. What does that mean in terms of getting involved and applying that policy? And I should just say, actually, before I move off that, this is already our policy as ACS. Our assured advice policy for members is to use Challenge 25 for all age-restricted products. But this is about really making that clear, promoting that message really clearly, and you can get involved and being part of that promotion. Obviously, for retailers who are on this call and who are looking at this film and who are involved in other ways, the key message is to promote Challenge 25 in stores. And when Ed takes you through the various materials that are available, lots of ways you can do that at the till, at other parts of the store where different products are displayed and sold from, and in other communications that you have with your customers. If you are a supplier, whether that's a wholesaler or whether that's a product supplier, product manufacturer to our sector, you can do your bit too to promote these materials and promote this message to retailers. And we've been delighted with the response we've had from suppliers right across the piece, including alcohol, but in lots of other categories as well. And the recognition that Challenge 25 is an effective policy that needs to be applied across the piece. And obviously it's in everyone's interest to make sure that products aren't being sold to people who are too young to buy them. Part of that is about engagement in social media. You can talk to each other on social media, you can talk to wider audiences on social media, you can talk to retailers, talk to consumers on social media, and our collective power in doing that, I think, can be really strong. And all this really adds up to being an advocate for Challenge 25 for all age-restricted products. And I make that point again because that is the point we're trying to make sure we really land today. So a bit more about today's event, and just to take you through what's going to happen next. You've heard from me. Next, we'll hear from Ed Woodall, our Government Relations Director, and Ed will take you through a little bit more detail about the campaign, about how it's being used and what we're looking for from the sector. We're then absolutely delighted to have a ministerial message from the Small Business Minister, Paul Scully, and his responsibilities. He includes assured advice schemes, so he'll talk about those. And it's appropriate that our next speaker will be Philip LeShirley from Bucks and Surrey Trading Standards. This is ACS primary authority partner with whom we produce the assured advice, which I already referenced, and Ed will reference more, and you'll see much more of. And then delighted to have a retailer panel to talk about, if you like, Challenge 25 in practice, in reality, how it works on the ground. So Hardy Shapiro-Wall, who is chair of the Retail of Alcohol Standards Group. She's also a fellow director of Community Alcohol Partnerships with me, and her day job is in licensing at Tesco. Chloe Taylor-Green, independent retailer, part of a family operating a spa store in Staffordshire. And Neil Renault, head of health and safety for East of England cooperatives. So a great mix of retailers talking about Challenge 25 in practice. So that's all I wanted to say in introduction to this event. Thank you again all very much for attending. And without any further ado, I'm going to pass over to Ed Woodall.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Great to be here. I'm Ed, Government Relations Director at ACS. And I'm really pleased to be able to share a bit more information about the campaign and share a bit more about how Challenge 25 is being used in the convenience sector currently. And it's actually a really positive starting point that I have to share with you today with some of the data and insights we've gathered over the last year or so around Challenge 25. And that's that consumer awareness of the campaign is really high. Use of Challenge 25 materials across the sector is really positive. But my key message from today is actually that we have an opportunity to build on that even further today. And I want to start on the success story about preventing youth access in our sector to age-restricted products. And I've pulled out here data from the NHS smoking and drug use survey that just demonstrates that the trend over time is that the number of young people accessing alcohol from shops has declined significantly. And this trend doesn't just apply to youth access to alcohol, it applies across all age-restricted products. There's a real positive trend of youth access not being from shops currently in our sector. And that is a really positive starting point for us to talk from today. But I want to reflect on how we achieve that success and how we can build on it further. So the first thing I wanted to talk about was, I think that's delivered that success is around our commitment to community retailing. And the data is really clear on this from our local shop report and from our community barometer, that convenience stores are always highly rated as having the most positive impact in their local area. And of course, to do that, to hold that reputation, you have to be on the side of your community. You have to be on the side of preventing antisocial behaviour, preventing youth access, understanding your community and their needs. And convenience retailers do that really well. They know their communities really well and they get involved in a number of different ways. But one of the key ways they've done that is through community alcohol partnerships, CAP, which, as James mentioned, ACS is a board member of and long-term supporter of, and our members have engaged with them at a local level to try and prevent youth access and alcohol-related harm, and also prevent antisocial behaviour. Now, that's just one example of the many different campaigns that we get involved with in our local communities. But doing that puts us right at the centre of our communities and gives us a real commitment to responsible retailing. So I think that's the first pillar of that success in delivering what we've done so far. The next area I want to talk about was our commitment to regular and high quality training of our staff. And the data I put up on the screen here is from ACS's colleague survey, which polls over 7,000 people working in the convenience sector. And again, a very, very consistent trend from colleagues working in convenience stores across the country, that age-restricted sales training is the most highly rated training that they receive. They receive a lot of other training, which gets very good scores, but age-restricted sales training comes top. And that commitment to that regular, high-quality training makes a real difference to our colleagues' awareness around all the different policy and procedures, all the different age-restricted products that they have to manage, which James put up that big list earlier. That's a difficult job. And that's why this commitment to training and high quality training is a real core element of our success in this space. The next area, and really the focus around today, is around clear messaging to our customers. And Challenge 25 has been absolutely central to that. And it's been around for a very, very long time now. The sort of brand has slightly tweaked and changed, but the message remains really clear. If you look under 25, please be prepared to show proof of age when buying age-restricted products. It's very clear, the campaign's very clear, and it's used across not just the convenience sector, but a wide range of retail premises across the country. And that consistent messages has been really central to our success too. So those three key pillars: community retailing, high quality training, and clear messaging to our customers. But of course, that clear messaging is only as good as the retailers using it and how they're using it in their stores. So we went out last year and we asked our members, how are you using that in the stores? Where is Challenge 25 material being used? And some really interesting findings that 9 out of 10 retailers are using the Challenge 25 messaging at their checkouts. That's the most common place that is used. And also that's built around lots of other systems as well. So their EPOS and checkout systems will have warnings that come up when age-restricted products are scanned, but that Challenge 25 messaging alongside that is really important for customer and colleague communications to challenge for ID. The second area was that 7 out of 10 retailers were using messaging on walls near age-restricted product categories as they're displayed around the store. And that is really important, and that's something that we really want to build on, because actually it's delivering that message at an earlier point in the customer journey around the store, so they're primed and ready for when they come to the checkout to be asked for their proof of age when they're buying all different types of age-restricted products. So that's a really great success story and an opportunity again for us to build on it. And as a result of that, that has had real cut through with our customers. So we wanted to see awareness and understanding of 2025. So we did polling of 18 to 34-year-olds and their understanding of Challenge 25 policy at the end of last year. And it's really pleasing to see that 71% of 18 to 34-year-olds were able to identify the correct policy for what Challenge 25 is. If someone looks under age 25, they'll be asked for proof of age. So that's a really great testament to the success, but it's also an opportunity to build further and do more. And that's really my message today. As I said at the start, we can't be complacent about Challenge 25 and its awareness amongst consumers and our store colleagues. And we've got to keep hammering that message home. There's some really good reasons to do that. First of all, unfortunately, age verification, proof of ID, and being asked for ID is unfortunately a top trigger for violence and abuse against some of our store colleagues. Some 89% of colleagues working in our sector reflect that they've been subject to abuse, verbal abuse, working in the stores. So the earlier we can get the message to customers and prime them for being asked, the better. The second reason is to get the message to customers as early as possible for preventing violence and abuse, but also because I think we can all reflect on the last 2 years, the number of messages that we've had to give our customers in stores, whether that's around social distancing or face coverings or hand sanitizing. There's a busy space to communicate to customers. So we can't just assume that they know, because Challenge 25 has been around for so long, that message is there. We've got to keep pushing it in stores and get that message to them as early as possible in their journey to store, and if not, before they arrive in store. And then, of course, we need to enhance the success of Challenge 25 across all age-restricted product categories. It's been policy for ACS for Challenge 25 to be used across all these product categories for a long time, but there is a gap to fill there. We've got to make sure that the successes we've seen, as James mentioned about this starting around alcohol, is extended across all age-restricted product categories. So what are we doing to try and achieve those goals and keep pushing Challenge 25? Well, the first thing we did at the end of last year was a big public awareness campaign around the Challenge 25 campaign. And we worked with our broadcast agency marketeers to do a broadcast campaign with talking about Challenge 25 on 45 different national radio stations and reaching millions of consumers about what Challenge 25 is, what products it applies to, and where you should expect to see that around the stores. And we have to keep doing that. We have to keep delivering those messages and also tracking the awareness amongst the public. And that's something that we are committed to continue to do. But as I said, this is also about messaging in stores. And that's what we are launching today: new materials, new assets for you to all get involved and have a look. And this is just one of the social media assets we've developed that sends where Challenge 25, what products it applies to, what the policy is, what the relevant proof of age materials are to be asked for if someone comes to the till and looks under 25, and where to get access to more materials. So your key things to take away from this is have a look, acs.org.uk/challenge25, at all the new materials that we have developed to be able to communicate the campaign. And when you go there, you will be spoilt for choice of the different materials that you can download. So to be clear, for all the different product categories we've talked about today, whether that's national lottery, e-cigarettes, medicines, bladed items, alcohol, tobacco, there are all these different campaign assets that you can download to communicate to customers. So that's A4 posters in landscape and portrait, digital display screens, shelf sliders, badges, all so you can get those. You've got the opportunity to get those messages to customers early, as well as social media materials for you to be able to share across your networks. So it's a big part of our Assured Advice program, and there's a whole new area of materials that you can use to share in stores. So the message is to please get involved. If you're a retailer, to promote in your stores, have a look at those materials. If you're a supplier or a wholesaler, promote them to retailers. Engage in social media and across all of your networks. And of course, be an advocate for Challenge 25 for all age-restricted products through using all of those new materials that we have developed. And there's a great opportunity, as I said at the outset, to build on the success of Challenge 25 across more age-restricted products. And there's new materials for you to use to do that. So don't forget acs.org.uk/challenge25 for those new materials. Thank you very much. And I will pass back to James.
Fantastic. Thank you very much indeed, Ed. I mean, some really clear messages there. And the first is to say, I think, well done to our industry. We have made big strides in this area. We have a really proud record in terms of deterring underage purchases. And I think that's something we should be proud of. But that message as well about not a time to be complacent, a time to be absolutely clear about applying the policy across all those products. And what a great set of resources available to help you to do that. So now a bit of political context, and delighted to be hearing from the Small Business Minister, Paul Scully, with whom we've built a very close relationship over the last few years. He's spoken at various events, and actually I met him yesterday, and we're constantly in touch, particularly talking about the impacts of the pandemic on the sector and the things that the government need to do to support retailers through this time. But of course, it's very important to remember there is a day job as well. I know Paul is very aware of that. And issues like Challenge 25 are just as important to retailers in terms of that important day-to-day trading and so many transactions which are subject to that policy. So without further ado, I'm going to pass over to the Parliamentary Under Secretary of State at Department for Business, Energy and Industrial Strategy, Paul Scully, MP.
Thank you for inviting me to support the launch of this important campaign to increase awareness of the Challenge 25 scheme. As the Minister responsible for small businesses and consumers, I'm delighted that the Association of Convenience Stores has given me this opportunity to help promote that campaign, both to consumers and to the members of your association. I'd first like to start by recognising the importance of the hard work that retailers do every day to deliver the responsible sale of age-related products. I know the Challenge 25 concept has already been adopted by many retailers who sell age-restricted products such as alcohol, tobacco and fireworks, but it can also be applied to other age-restricted products such as medicines or e-cigarettes. It's been a while since I was personally asked to prove I was older than 25, but Challenge 25 is proving to be an important tool in helping retailers of all sizes to ensure that effective age verification is working to prevent underage supply of those restricted products, protecting young and vulnerable people. So I'd like to thank retailers and particularly convenience stores who have already adopted and promoted the scheme. As it stands, there's already strong consumer awareness of Challenge 25, and I share the ACS's ambitions for the scheme to drive consumer awareness even further forward. The Challenge 25 scheme also demonstrates what can be achieved when we have effective partnerships between regulations and regulators and business. One of the government's key mechanisms for delivering consistent and proportionate regulation is primary authority, which is a way for business to receive assured and tailored advice from regulators. So I'm pleased to see that the primary authority partnership set up between Buckinghamshire and Surrey Trading Standards and the Association of Convenience Stores is playing such a valuable role in the Challenge 25 scheme. The assured advice guidance provided through that primary authority partnership sets out the best practices for preventing underage sales, and it can help at convenience stores to apply Challenge 25 effectively, supporting its use across all age-restricted product categories. I'm sure that many small retailers will find the assured advice guidance helpful in meeting such challenges, and I'd like to thank both Buckinghamshire and Surrey Trading Standards and the Association of Convenience Stores for this excellent piece of work and for the efforts in raising awareness on preventing underage sales to your membership and beyond. I also wanted to take the opportunity to highlight another example of regulatory partnership that I hope will help businesses with age verification in the future. As more and more of our life and work is conducted digitally, having an agreed digital identity that you can use easily and universally will be the cornerstone of future economies. And that's something that government is already exploring with businesses. The Home Office and the Office for Product Safety and Standards within the Business Department are currently trialling ways in which technology can help prevent the underage sale of alcohol. Now, these trials will provide an opportunity for retailers to test innovative approaches to age verification, such as digital ID, to understand how technology can improve or enhance alcohol licensing objectives and protect children from harm. We will, of course, want to ensure that any new technologies and new approaches to age verifications can also suit the needs of all retailers while strengthening the protection for the young and vulnerable. Once those trials have concluded, the government will consider whether digital age verification approaches should be applied more widely to other categories of products across the country. The government's backing for regulatory partnerships, whether it's through the primary authority or through those trials for digital identity, is one of the main ways we continue to support the members of the Association of Convenience Stores to prevent underage sales effectively. And as part of that important effort, I'd like to thank you once more for implementing the ACS's Challenge 25 scheme and for contributing to its success so far. The more that Challenge 25 is used and adopted, the more familiar consumers will become with it, and the easier interactions on age verification will become. So I hope the launch of this excellent new campaign, including ACS's broadcast campaign last month, will increase the scheme's adoption and impact, making it easier for all retailers to act responsibly and Challenge 25.
Thank you very much to Paul Scully. A great message. And I think that last point, actually, I think he made is a really important one I'd just like to emphasize, which is Ed mentioned about trigger points for violence, for confrontation. We know that is such a massive challenge for retailers and colleagues. But in the sense, the way to tackle that is to have this really strong policy in place. So you're changing the expectations of people coming into stores, and ultimately you're not having so many people coming in who are underage, who aren't willing to prove their age. So great to hear that message from the Minister. Thank you very much indeed. And he mentioned, Paul mentioned the assured advice scheme that we run. So, and talked a little bit about that. Rather than me repeating that again, and then you hear it again, I'm going to introduce someone who can tell you much more about that and where Challenge 25 and the rest of the advice that we have fits together. So I'd now just like to introduce Philip LeShirley from our primary authority partner, Surrey and Bucks Trading Standards. Over to you, Phil.
Okay, well, good morning, everybody. Thank you very much for inviting me to speak today. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Philip LeShirley and I work for Buckinghamshire and Surrey Trading Standards. And alongside my colleague Joe, we look after the ACS Primary Authority Partnership. So, the ACS Assured Advice Scheme, as most of you will know, is a comprehensive advice scheme across trading standards, environmental health and fire. It's one of the biggest partnerships in the UK, and it was our first coordinated partnership, and that means, you know, a partnership with a trade association or similar body. So we're very proud of our work with ACS. In particular, the fact that the ACS guides were the first to incorporate pictorial content in them. And as such, they are regarded as a flagship primary authority scheme. And the guides are used by members, including the 4,921 that have opted into the Assured Advice Scheme. But what you may not know is that they are also used by other businesses, trading standards officers out in the field, environmental health officers out in the field, and even students studying for exams. They use them as a revision aid. So for my money, what better compliment than that? Now, there are 11 assured advice guides out there, and look out this year for new guides on e-cigarettes and also on high fat, salt and sugar regulations. We recognise that in particular, high fat, salt and sugar are very, very difficult areas to implement, and the guides are really good at helping you navigate those choppy waters. Now, the guides are updated annually, and one of the most used in the sector and beyond is the age-restricted sales guide, as you can appreciate. And amends this year to that guide include amends on national lottery, CBD, refusals books, and to come are changes to knives legislation, which I'm going to touch upon in a minute. Now, one of the key elements of the age-restricted sales guide is for Challenge 25 to be used across all age-restricted products. Now, why is that? Well, when we are speaking to traders and we are advising on age-restricted sales, we often use the analogy of catching a flight. Because at the end of the day, if you're about to jump onto a flight, we all remember catching flights. If you're looking to catch a flight to Australia and your gate closes at 12 o'clock, you don't jump on at 11, you don't aim, sorry, to reach the gate at 11:59. There's simply too many factors that can affect your ability to meet that target. You might get held up in traffic, you might be held up in security, there might be queues, and you know the risks of missing it by just 1 minute are huge because you're gonna, you know, the gate will close. So we leave ourselves some time, don't we? And please take it from me as someone that has sent a lot of children in over the years to traders to buy age-restricted products with the police, with other trading standards officers. Time and time again, what we have heard when we've interviewed the seller, the person on the till is, I thought they looked over 18. I thought they looked over 18. I have never heard anyone say, I thought they looked over 25. And that's what Challenge 25 does. If you are only checking that customers are over 18, simply put, lots of minors will slip through the net. Because if Challenge 25 is implemented properly, it's pretty much, and there's no absolutes, but it's pretty much a fail-safe system as you're providing yourself with this 7-year safety net. Why? Because, well, if you think about it, it's very unlikely a 17-year-old is going to look 26. Now, we recognise 100% that this stuff is difficult. Now, boys in particular can be huge at the age of 13. But if you implement Challenge 25, they will still have a young-ish face. But, and this is a big but, if implemented properly, the staff that you have on the tills will need to overcome what we call the hurdle of embarrassment. Now, what's the hurdle of embarrassment? Well, frankly, Challenge 25 will sometimes mean asking 30-year-old customers for ID. And if you're an 18-year-old member of staff, quite new to this, it can be embarrassing asking someone that's a lot older than you for ID, and it can also be a bit annoying for the person being asked as well. So how do we advise that you mitigate against this? Well, first of all, flattery can always be quite effective. You know, using things like, "I'm really sorry, it's because you look so young that I need to ask you," that sort of thing. But our main advice in this space is to depersonalise the interaction by referring to customer policy. So if you say if the member of staff says to the customer, "Look, I'm really sorry, it's just customer policy, company policy, that we ask every person that's looks under 25 for ID," it stops being the person asking the customer, and it just becomes the business asking the customer. And depersonalising it is often the way forward to avoid these embarrassing situations, but also these confrontational situations as well. There is no getting around this. If Challenge 25 is implemented properly, it will happen. And, you know, let's be clear, you can't train staff on what 25 looks like. But what we say is you can support them and supervise them. And the only way we say that Challenge 25 can be implemented properly is through experience. So in other words, when you've got a new member of staff, don't throw them into the deep end and just chuck them on the till and expect them to be able to get their head around Challenge 25. Let them observe you or your best team members first. And then when they're on, shadow them. You know, watch your peak times. We always say that you know, a convenience store on the main road in Brighton, where all the pubs and clubs are, on a Tuesday afternoon at 2 o'clock is a very different place to 10:30 on a Friday night. So watch your peak times. Make sure you have the right numbers of staff and the right type of staff on. And always back up your staff when they do challenge on 25, because they might be challenging people that you might not have challenged. But nonetheless, we need to ingrain in them the fact that, you know, what they're doing is right and that they're supported. Now, I wanted to mention very quickly under online sales, we know that 22% of ACS members have an online offering. Please make sure that you verify age online using a provider that complies with the PAS standard, which is 1296, or that you check ID upon delivery. And the guide is very good at providing detail on that, so please have a look at that. I mentioned knives earlier. The legislation on knives is likely to be changing so that a check online and delivery is going to be needed. Both will be needed when selling knives online, so please keep an eye out for that, and we will update the guide accordingly. So, unsurprisingly, my colleagues in trading standards across the UK see Challenge 25 as the gold standard for age verification. And they may, and I emphasise may, be less inclined to visit premises that are in primary authority schemes. Now, why is that? Well, first of all, they will know that the business is receiving advice from somewhere. And secondly, they'll know that they may well be blocked from taking any action against that business if they do get a sale. And if you think about it from a resource perspective, if an officer has a list of 30 premises that they can visit and only has enough resource to visit 5, you know, these are the sorts of things that are going to go into those decision-making processes when they're choosing the premises to go to. That said, many visits are intelligence-led, so it doesn't matter who you are or what scheme you're in. If you've had 10 complaints against you for age-restricted sales, you will get a visit. So, you know, that's the sort of thing that goes into the enforcement processes. And Ed asked me to give an example of assured advice in action and where it really worked for a primary authority partner. And the example I've used is actually for Stonegate pubs. And the reason I've used this one is because this one went all the way up to the Secretary of State. So Stonegate pubs received assured advice on pest control from their primary authority partner, and that's Reading Borough Council. After that advice was received, Dudley Council challenged this policy as they didn't agree with it and they wanted to prosecute Stonegate pubs. Now, the matter went all the way up to the Secretary of State, as I said, And on the 4th of January 2019, it was determined by the Secretary of State that the advice was correct and that the enforcement could not take place. Now, I promise you that had the assured advice not been in place, had the primary authority scheme not been in place, then Stonegate would have had to have argued their case in court. Now, the fact is, in this case, Reading did everything for Stonegate pubs. They blocked the enforcement action, they dealt with Dudley, they dealt with the representations to the Secretary of State, and Stonegate pubs were in a scheme, followed the advice, and the primary authority did all the blocking and did everything on their behalf. So they didn't have any court costs, they didn't have any reputational risk damage, they didn't have anything. So the scheme does work, and it goes right the way to the top. And of course, that's what we will do for you as members if you are challenged having followed ACS advice. So how do you sign up? Simple. Speak to Sarah Johnson, who's brilliant at dealing with members. I've got her email address there and phone number. I'll put the link to the guidance in there. And more than happy to answer any questions, along with my colleague Joe, who is an expert in age-restricted sales. So thank you very much for giving us the opportunity to speak today.
Phil, thanks very much indeed, Phil. I think for an explanation of assured advice more generally and how it works and why it's such an important tool for us, and particularly how Challenge 25 works in practice, and a little insight there into how trading standards officers and other enforcement officers think about enforcing the law in the context of businesses like ours. So I'm delighted now to be starting a panel discussion with Neil Renault, Chloe Taylor-Green, and Hardish Purewal. Hope you guys are all here. I think you all are. You're all extremely welcome. Thanks very much for joining us and just trying to bring this to life, really, and to show how this works in practice. We're very happy to take any questions. If you want to put them in the chat, we'll do our very best to answer. I'm notoriously bad at actually asking those questions. I'll do my very best to try and put them to the panel to answer them myself. So thanks, guys, all of you for joining. I'm going to start with you, Hardish. Just introduce yourself a little bit and talk a little about how you approach age verification in Tesco stores.
Yeah, good morning, and thank you for inviting me to support with the Challenge 25 question. So I chair the Retail Alcohol Standards Group, and Challenge 25 was an ideology developed by the group and then implemented by individual businesses. So RAS consists of all of like UK retailers kind of committed to promoting the retail of alcohol, both in store and online, and we work with various bodies. So in terms of you know, what we do as an industry and how we kind of implement. So we've got Challenge 25 in all of the stores that for RAS members as well, and then through community alcohol partnerships we encourage all of the independent retailers that take part in that to be a part of the Challenge 25, and whether that's kind of on trade and off trade.
Indeed, brilliant. Thank you, Hardish. We'll come back to pick up on some of those points in a bit more detail. Chloe, tell us a bit about your business and how you approach age verification in the store.
Hi, so I'm Chloe. I'm from Spa. We're an independent store, so we've got one in Stafford and one 200 miles away in Hampshire. My dad's been running them for it's about 20 years now. So this one's a new store, so the clientele base is completely different between the two and what we see with the approach and the customers. So we're very heavy on age related. It's across the board on everything we do, including energy drinks. We won't sell to anyone under 16. It's just company policy, and it keeps everything a bit more strict. Same with IDing. It goes across the lottery, the cigarettes, tobacco, alcohol. It's consistency, and I think if you have that consistency there, you know, no one can complain or argue with you.
Absolutely, that's great. I want to explore a bit more about how that works with colleagues. Thank you very much, Chloe. Neil, tell us a bit about you and your business and age verification within the business.
Yeah, good morning. My name's Neil Renault. I'm the Head of Health and Safety at the East of England Co-op. We're a co-op based in the east of England, so we've got 129 stores, predominantly convenience, with a smaller supermarket portfolio. We've applied Challenge 25 since it's been about, certainly for the 9 years that I've been with the organisation. But what we've done over recent years, we know the importance of Challenge 25 to us as a business, but it's about how we apply it and how we get the best out of Challenge 25. And so we started a review of that a few years ago to get under the skin of how successful we were with it. And one of those was introducing our own internal test purchasing program. And what we also recognised that it's the sale of age-restricted product is not as simple as it used to be. It's not about that the alcohol. It's a lot of complexities to it now, and it's a real challenge for our guys on the tills. So there's not only got to think about the types of ID, the foreign ID, the dark selling with tobacco, the social responsibility restrictions we have, like medicines, laxatives, for example, energy drinks. It's a complex world. So with our internal test purchasing program, we tried to get under the skin of what support our colleagues needed on the till to really get the most out of Challenge 25. And by speaking to those guys that actually failed test purchases, we found out that some of the challenges they're facing and some of the support they needed. And it's things like some of them struggle with the perception of ages. So we tailored our training approach around that. A lot of them were talking about the fear of antisocial behaviour, that it was a real barrier for people actually having that conversation about Challenge 25 at the tills. So we tailored our e-learning to focus on that, to encourage them to have those conversations and ask for idea in a particular manner. And also we promoted our in-store security measures a lot more. So they were aware of the support available, that we're aware of the CCTV, the support from management they had. So so whilst we're always had Challenge 25 there, it's always been important to it. It's now about how we get the most out of it and how we
make it work in practice with every colleague.
And to make it work.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Thank you, Neil. And so Chloe, the things that Neil talked about there in terms of making Challenge 25 work, there's there's perception of age and training on perception of age, and there's fear of antisocial behaviour, two barriers which we need to address. How does that resonate with you? Are those some of the challenges that your colleagues are having as well?
I think it's absolutely harder now. People are wearing masks. On essentially this section of a face, so quite often you will come into a circumstance where you end up IDing someone that is actually closer to a 40 benchmark, because you're trying to do it based on a small proportionality versus what historically you would have. It's two different clientele bases. I mean, where I am here, I can't actually say generally we run into issues if you ID someone and if they don't have anything. And energy drinks are a prime example. Most of the time it's not even do you have ID, it's I'm actually not going to serve you it because you're clearly not old enough. All of our age related, whether it's sold or not, goes through the till. So if you reject a sale and refuse one, it still gets through on the system, and those reports are checked by me on a weekly basis to determine the due diligence of it, to make sure that whoever's serving at the till's not putting everyone at the same age coming through. The majority of people are understanding. I mean, I'm a prime example. I'm nearly 30 and I expect to be ID'd. 9 times out of 10 I do get ID'd, and if I don't, I'm usually quite surprised, because you are going on such a small proportionality. It's quite bizarre. I think as time's gone on, people have got less bothered about being ID'd because you don't anticipate it's going to happen. If I went back 5 years into the other store, I remember having ID'd someone and them just getting really, well, you've served me before, your colleague served me before, and it's just trying to explain to the customer, yes, my colleague may have served you yesterday, but I don't think you look over 25, therefore I am within my right.
Absolutely. To make that decision today, yeah.
I'm sorry, I'm not willing to serve you.
Yeah.
But I think because people have got used to it now being, okay, well, it's over 25 rather than over 18, they're not as bothered because they're just accustomed to it.
Yeah.
But it's different what we do. I mean, I lived in Florida for a year, and where I was, their law is you ID anyone that looks under 40.
Right.
And I remember sitting with my mum and dad who both got ID'd and just thinking, way the type of people are trying to argue, doesn't it? Because you just, yes, I'm old enough, but yes, I'll need to carry ID on me.
Sure, it sets that expectation. That's brilliant. Thank you, Chloe. Hardy, so reflections from what Neil and Chloe said there about some of the challenges colleagues particularly find. Does that resonate with the challenges and some of the ways that we can go about addressing that as retailers?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, asking for ID becomes a spike point, doesn't it? Because somebody that may be over 18, we're challenging, you know, they're kind of saying, well, actually, I'm allowed to buy alcohol and you are stopping me. And I guess some of the training that we give to our teams is around kind of being empathetic, that actually don't take it personally. This isn't against you, it's more against the business. And to you know, if you've asked for ID, we still need to see that ID, but and then ask a manager to come along and support you if somebody gets too upset. And it's things like, you know, we kind of suggest that you say to the customer, actually, we'll keep this bottle of wine for you here. So when you come back in your ID, come straight to me and I'll say to you, I'm going to pick it up off the shelf again. So just to kind of balance some of the frustration that somebody's feeling because they're always running low on time or whatever. And so there's lots of things that kind of can get in the way and why people feel frustrated of not being able to buy that alcohol when they're actually allowed. And then I guess the youngsters, you know, they're going to kick up because they know they can't buy it and they're trying it on. But you know, we have a very strong Thing 25 policy. You say no, we say no. So we're always supporting our cashiers.
Yeah, that's really interesting. It's a really, really interesting technique. One I hadn't heard actually. So hopefully some people can take away. And Hardish, do you find that there's maybe a perception I might have that younger colleagues find it particularly difficult to challenge? Am I right? And how do you address that?
I guess I mean, the positive thing about Challenge 25 is there's a 7-year gap. So actually somebody is, you know, as I think Philip said, somebody that's 18 isn't going to, you know, and 25, there's a 7-year gap there. So younger colleagues may find it a little bit more difficult, but also they are in that age group. You know, there are I guess 16-year-olds always need authorization. So although we ask them to check ID, the ID would also be checked with whoever is authorizing that sale anyway. But they are also, it's their peer group. So they would, you know, they live with this group of people. So that it should be as easy to check ID. I guess the question is whether they find it harder to say no or ask for ID in the first place. That, you know, that's where the confidence comes in, and that's where we need to support that group so that they get the confidence.
Sure. I mean, one of the things about in our sector was we have a very broad range of age of colleagues as well. You know, a lot of people retired and semi-retired, and also people first jobs. So that whole breadth and supporting everyone, and maybe slightly different support needed for different individuals in the workforce. Neil, can I come back to you to talk about, and you sort of touched on this, but promotion of Challenge 25 around the store. So we often talk about this in terms of the interaction at the till, at the point of sale. What else do you do in and around the store to promote the message, and what's most effective in doing that?
Yeah, I mean, historically, we were very sort of primitive in our approach in terms of we'd have a sign at the entrance, we'd have a sign at the till, and that was it. But at the entrance, how many times did you see a customer standing at an entrance reading the signs on a door? You don't. They just want to get in there. And also at the till point, it's you've missed the boat to an extent because the inconvenience or the embarrassment has already been caused. So you're sort of like those two places were not seen as the most effective place to have them displayed. So we moved more towards having the display, having the POS at the point where they actually select the product, where people do spend more time actually choosing the product. And that really helped with those lesser products, if you like, with things like energy drinks, where it's a bit more complex, where you've got the high caffeine ones that we restrict, but not your bog standard Lucozade. So it really was there at the point they select the product, so they can then use that POS as part of their decision making process. So if they got their ID on them, they might choose the high caffeine energy drink. If they haven't, they might go for the Lucozade scenario. So, and we'd like to think that that does reduce the conflict that we get at the till point.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Chloe, Hardish, I'll come to you first, Chloe. Do you use signage around the store as well?
Yeah, so we've got it around the store because we've got like stands that stand so high and you can put A4 pictures in them. But it also comes up on the POS at the till, it's on the card machines. If our till doesn't get used and it goes into a sleep mode, it comes up as a screensaver. So it is dotted.
Sure, absolutely. So the expectation set there.
You're aware when you come into the store, have I got ID on me today? And it obviously changes the decisions on what you're going to purchase.
Yeah, sure. Sets the expectation before they get to the till. Thank you, Hardish. And around the stores, obviously range of stores Tesco runs, some small ones, but also some very big ones. What's the strategy in terms of promoting the message around the shopping journey?
Yeah, so wherever we've got age restricted products, and we would have some signage up. But also, I mean, what I love about it is that it's an industry standard. It doesn't kind of belong to any one particular, Tesco or Asda or Sainsbury's, or it doesn't belong to anybody in particular. It's an industry standard. So and an 18-year-old can walk into any shop that sells alcohol and they will see that signage. So it's recognised by them all.
Yeah, absolutely. Got a couple of points on the chat. And actually, I've got a couple of questions and one answer, even better. So one of the questions from Gary is about getting free Challenge 25 materials, all available through the ACS website. And thanks to Raz, who's worked with us to make sure all those are available. Philip LeShirley, who heard from a moment ago, just picking up on the point about masks, which Chloe made, that there is it's permitted to ask consumers to customers to lower the mask briefly on agent ID. Does that work, guys? How's that working in practice when you ask customers to do that? Is that effective?
We took a different spin on that. We recognised that we could allow our colleagues to do that, but we didn't advise our colleagues to do that. The face coverings in our food stores became a bigger trigger point than restricted products themselves. So we didn't want to encourage colleagues challenging them on that. If they couldn't make the judgment on someone's age with the face covering on, the default position is they ask for ID.
Sure, absolutely. Chloe, same with you in terms of how you dealt with the face coverings there?
Kind of an independent question. If you want to see, and I think it's just how you ask the question, do you mind? Because 9 times out of 10 a customer won't mind. And I know from experience in for a bottle of wine, she said, do you mind taking your mask down? You're doing it at such a quick interval. It's personal preference. I think if you need that just to validate, I don't see the problem with it.
Yeah, that's really good. Sorry, you cut out a bit there, Chloe, but I think Chloe's saying it's lovely that the way you ask is really important on the mask issue, and that's a really good point. Got a point from Vince, and just really a comment about digital proof of age, which I'm fortunately in the position to answer. We do lots of work with this as proof of age standards scheme. So there is now a set of standards in place for digital proof of age and its presentation in a physical retail environment. That means shops in our case. And we're now developing the standards on which the standards are in place. Now developing some of those products being developed in line with those standards, so that where we want to get to is just as with a physical proof of age card, you know what to look for, the hologram and the other features of the card to make sure it's genuine, that you'll be able to do exactly the same when it comes to digital proof of age. Because clearly many customers, quite rightly from their point of view, don't want to go out with a wallet and a and lots of separate bits of plastic. So they want to have it all on their phone. And I'm sorry, I failed to answer Gary's question properly. Sorry, Gary. The specific question was about actual training for volunteers on Challenge 25. Yes, there is training available, and there is some new training that we're developing with community alcohol partnerships as well. So I think that will be available. So we'll make sure you get access to that. Gary, sorry, I didn't read your question properly first time. We're just going to close up now, and I'd like to go to each of the panelists in turn. I'll come to Hardish, Neil, and then Chloe gets the last word. Just really, one key tip in terms of promoting Challenge 25, something that makes Challenge 25 work really well in your business, and something you think would be a good tip for retailers to take away. So Hardish, Neil, then Chloe.
So it's all down to the store team and how they approach it. So a lot of a lot of times they will say, oh, they looked over 18 rather than following Think 25. So it is, so we break it down. The training's broken down into stop, assess, check, and then you kind of, make the sale. So I guess just break each of them down so people are still not thinking 18, which is quite a difficult, it's that barrier to kind of get over.
Yeah. Thank you. That's great. And I think also heartening for an organisation as big as Tesco that you're having to maintain a very strong focus on this with everyone who comes into the business and keep reminding people in the business. So it's a challenge for everyone, but it's great. You're obviously very committed to it and have done a great job with it. Neil, key tip for retailers.
Yeah, I mean, I touched on this before. The biggest benefit we got was just from speaking to our staff, particularly those that failed our internal test purchasing, just exploring why they didn't ask for ID and what those barriers are and how we can help with those barriers. Because, like I said, the Challenge 25 concept is a very simple one, if you like, but there's obviously a lot more to it when you're standing there in front of a customer having to ask that question. So how can we support them to make sure we get the most out of the Challenge 25 policy?
Yeah, it's a great tip. Obviously, starting by talking to colleagues is always a good idea, isn't it? In retail generally, and obviously in this case for sure. Chloe, you get the last word. What's a tip you give to your fellow retailers?
It's just, going on what Hardish said, is getting the staff to forget it's not, do you look over 18? It's, do you look over 25? And then just going back and making sure, they are sticking to those rules and they are IDing and they are inputting, the date of birth off the driving license and doing it consistently so that they don't come in one day and get served, not be questioned, come in the next day by someone else and ask for ID, and just having that consistency across the board, whether it be alcohol, cigarettes, energy drink.
Absolutely, that's great. Well, I mean, thankfully, I think a lot of the messages that came up there are the key messages of this campaign. It's about applying across all age-related products. It's about engaging with and supporting colleagues. It's about communicating it well in store. Yes, at the till point, but in other parts of the store as well, so that you get the interruption of the journey with that message. And I think it's the final point I want to make before we close is to say thank you to everyone in the industry who has really gripped Challenge 25 and made it a big part of what we do. Believe me, 20 years ago, and I'm old enough to, I've been in the industry long enough to tell you, this was not the sort of debate we were having. The discussion was about how do we get policies in place to make sure that people get challenged. The idea of having any sort of leeway was quite a challenging conversation in itself. I think there's consensus on that now, and Challenge 25 has become the norm, and that's been great. So thanks everyone for really embracing this responsible retailing agenda, for really making it happen every day. Easy for me to sit here and talk about, but it's Chloe and her colleagues and Hardish and Neil and their colleagues who are having to implement this day by day, and we do a fantastically good job in doing that. This is about doing it better, maintaining profile, maintaining it at the top of the agenda, and maintaining that policy across all age-restricted products. So thanks very much to Ed, to the Minister Paul Scully, to Philip, to Hardish, Neil, and Chloe. Thank you all very much for taking part. Or if you're watching this back later, thank you for taking the time to watch this. And please do use the materials and all the other assets and resources available through the campaign. Thanks, everyone.